Hey, good evening, everybody. Lynn is with us. And oh my God, it is a hell of a story. Shout out to Emma on the Imagination Podcast again, which is where I discovered Lynn. And I put the link to the Imagination Podcast stream in the description. It's almost 3 hours long. Before I bring Lynn in, I'll just read a bit. So, a survivor of profound trauma, she's transformed unimaginable hardship into a powerful mission to uplift others. Journey from surviving CA to becoming a voice for healing and empowerment. Born into a world that would test her resilience from an early age, she endured these harrowing experiences as a young child. These traumatic events, which she has bravely shared through other platforms, occurred in environments where she should have been safe, including underground settings tied to institutions of power. Yet, even in the face of such darkness, her spirit refused to be broken. Her survival is a powerful reminder that courage can emerge from the deepest pain. Her story is one of triumph over adversity. So, huge thank you for coming on, Lynn.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. Honored.
We've got legal restrictions on my YouTube channel whereby I've got to just make sure and ask you that you give us permission to publish your story in your way of your anonymity.
Yes.
All right, I appreciate that. And I was telling you before we came on the air that our viewers like a long story. They don't like long stories cut short.
Yeah.
And the way we usually structure things is you tell your story in chronological order, and then we could talk about what you do now, activism, and take the viewer questions towards the end, if that's okay.
That's great.
All right, let's go back to the start then. Where were you born?
So I was born here in the United States, and I was born to a family with steeped in alcoholism and drug addiction. There was generational pedophilia on my mother's side, and my dad was an alcoholic and a workaholic and was never home. So my mom hated me from the time of conception until the day she died, and she's the one responsible for sending me to the places that I went.
Okay, and what state is this?
So I'm in Missouri.
And that was where you grew up, was it?
So I grew up here in the Midwest area. Yeah.
Okay, how did your parents meet?
So my parents met. My dad was in the military, and they met in a small town where they both lived. And then they got together. And whenever I was born, my mother, there was a trafficking house in the neighborhood, and she sent me there on a regular basis every day, many nights. And it was a regional hub for trafficking, and it was run by a military man who was completely insane. And then simultaneously, I was taken to a US based university medical center where they experiment on the children underground.
Oh my God. So how old are we talking right now?
From the time I was born until I was 5 years old.
So what's your first ever memory?
My first memory is actually in the womb. I remember being in the womb. I have extensive memories from my childhood. From the time I was born until 5 years old, all these things happened to me. And then at that time, what happened was what I call a memory wipe. 95% of my memory was erased when this was over. And I always knew something was horrifically wrong with me my entire life, never knew what. It affected everything I did. I remembered 5%, but that was just a tiny bit. And then in 2011, 2012, the first repressed memories started. And then they've come back like a flood ever since, to where, when you have trauma like that, you have a photographic memory of what it felt like, what you smelled, what you heard, what happened, what people said. And so my first memory is actually in the womb.
And what do you remember about being in the womb?
That I didn't want to be there. So what I remembered was, I know where I came from, and I came from heaven, and I came from the Lord in heaven. And whenever I was in the womb, I heard ugly yelling and screaming. I knew I was hated. I knew I was absolutely hated, and I didn't want to be here on this earth. I wanted to go back to where things were nice and wonderful and loving and kind. And so I I saw the Lord, I saw God in the womb, and I begged him. I said, "Do not make me go there." I just said, "I don't want to go there." And he is very loving and good, and he just would smile at me. And I remembered feeling like I was getting bigger and bigger. I don't remember being born, but that's my first memory.
That's interesting because neuroscience is showing now that the babies in the womb are absorbing sensory, the sounds and what is going on around them. So it's interesting that you picked up on that. And
Yes.
then those noises, then would you say that was your parents having arguments or?
Yes, that was my parents having arguments. It was primarily my mother because she absolutely hated me. She hated the fact that she was pregnant with me. I was completely unwanted by her, and she hated me. There was screaming all the time because of that.
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking. So what was your first memory after the womb memories?
So the very first memory that I have after the womb, I was probably 6 months old, and I remembered being in the trafficking house. And I remember, and I know your audience is okay with graphic descriptions because I don't know how else to explain this, but I was being trained for pedophilia.
We're
And
gonna let me just stop you a second. We're gonna
okay,
call them because if we use that word too much, YouTube will ban the video. So we're
okay,
gonna we're gonna call those monsters PDF files or PDFs.
okay.
Yeah, and it helps also if you say transportation instead of trafficking.
Transport. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
So
so you're getting there was involvement of the PDFs at this stage.
yes. So
Yeah.
the trafficking. Can I say trafficking? Do you think? Did you say
Transportation's preferred. Yeah.
transportation? Okay, I'll get my terminology. Sorry, I'll
Yeah.
put that down. Have to course correct me. So just correct me whenever
Right.
you need to. So in the transportation house, it was full of PDFs, and I was trained for PDFs at a very young age. And the very first memory that I have at 6 months old, they would take a metal spoon, and they would have men had ejaculated, and they would have that in the metal spoon, and it was to teach me. It was to teach me from the time I was 6 months old. And I was rarely fed food or water. And so I was nutrient deprived, and that was intentionally for what was to come. And I remember the feel of the spoon because, when you're a baby and you don't have teeth, that hurts. I mean, it's cold, and I remember that. And I also remember crying. I mean, it was horrible and painful, and everything they were doing, but no one ever came to the rescue. And so then I learned by the time I was 6 months old to not cry. Matter of fact, until 15 years ago, I could count on one hand the number of times I cried in my life. I was trained not to cry. I was trained to do the opposite, actually. And I've had to teach myself how to cry because nobody ever came. So it was a worthless endeavor. Matter of fact, when I was 18 months old, some kids pushed me down the stairs, and I broke my shoulder, and I never cried. So imagine your audience with little teeny ones, an 18-month-old breaking their shoulder and not saying a sound. I mean, that's the horror of it.
And I want to again back up what you're saying there. So there was the case, it's beyond some people's comprehension that people could do things to babies. And there was a case in this country, I'll put him on the screen. This guy was a mega pop star in the UK, Ian Watkins. He had the world at his fingertips, and he had super fans offering up babies to him to do these things to. He ended up in prison. He was recently unalived in prison because the prisoners viewed his crimes as so disgusting. And some of the women who offered up their kids to him, they ended up going to prison as well. So it is very real what you are describing. There's documented cases of this kind of thing. So, all right. So this is from 6 months onwards. Then what's happening as you're a toddler?
Yeah. So this continued. I was sent there every day and many nights, and the different things that would happen. There was a family that lived in the house, and there was the insane military man who ran it with his wife, and then they had a daughter who was married, and they had several children, and that's who lived in the house. But it was a regional transportation hub, and whenever I was little, um, I almost said every horror imaginable, but maybe your audience would just like to hear some of the things that I survived that made me who I am today, and why I fight fiercely for the little children today as part of my mission. Whenever I was little, I was denied food and water. I rarely got to eat. As a matter of fact, to this day, I have trouble eating food. I have to be very, very careful because my body never fully developed to be able to handle food. And so I do fine. I'm a marathoner today and a weightlifter. I'm very athletic, but I have to really watch what I eat. And I'd be, and it wasn't just me. So this was all the other children too. And so I'm speaking, my voice is for the little girl in me that survived this, and the little girl in me that helped other children survive, and all the many, many, many little ones that I saw that did not make it. So I'm their voice too. So when I described this, it wasn't just me, it was all of us. But we would be in the kitchen, we'd be tied down to the kitchen table often. Sorry, Gracie the cat.
Oh, Gracie.
She likes to make an appearance. She knows when I'm on a show, I'm a captive audience for pets. So, but
Oh.
she's learned to punch the buttons. So I had to take her down. She's kicked me off a couple shows. But, so we rarely got to wear clothes, and would be tied to things to keep us down. So tied to the kitchen table. The freezer was used often for punishment. So we'd have to put our faces in the freezer with our mouth open so our teeth would be exposed, which was horrific pain. They would also keep babies in the freezer, and they would be put in there alive because of what they do. That's just how they did it. They were cannibals also, and the sacrifices of the little ones. There would be, and I wanted to share a bit of the supernatural while I was there. There were angels there too all the time. And so I would see angels with all the children while I was there. But in the kitchen, in the living room, there would be the PDFs would gather there, and there would be plays and videos created for them. And I could see each PDF actually had a demon. I saw angels and demons all the time when I was little, still do to this day. I live a very supernatural lifestyle from when I survived. But each PDF had a demon, and they would either be stuck to their side or in them and coming out, or a mix, or standing right beside them. And they were just as real as the people, because whenever you're little like that, you see it all. There's no veil. I have a friend who's high up in the Department of Re-Education in the United States, and she said that the Department of Re-Education trains that out of children, how to see and have the supernatural experiences that we're supposed to have. There would be, I was kept in closets a lot. There was a lot of PDF behavior that happened in closets. They had an attic. Up in the attic, there was a lot of PDF behavior too. By the time I was 3 years old was whenever I was first fully penetrated on my birthday. And what's interesting, Sean, is so after, I mean, it was horrific. And when that was over, and I was home for that day, I decided to run away from home. And I didn't know how. I was 3. But I'd seen, I think, cartoons where children would pack their suitcase and then they go and they'd cross the road and they'd leave. And what's amazing is my entire life, there's one toy that I kept, and I'm going to, hold on, let's show it to you.
Yeah, please do.
So this was the little suitcase that I packed.
Oh.
There's a little suitcase that I packed whenever I was 3 years old when those animal PDFs, and because I was done. I mean, that was a horror, heinous crime against a child. And so I got my little suitcase to run away from home. I didn't pack it because I didn't see that in the cartoon. And I went to the curb, and I didn't know how to cross the street. No one had ever taught me how to cross the street. And so I just stood there, and I did not know what to do next when you know, run away from home. And so I stood there for the longest time, and then I just had to turn around and go back. And the, you know, biggest part of that horror too was the next day when my mom took me back, she said, I don't know what you guys are doing here, but she tried to run away and you have to stop this. And then they did. And that's whenever, you know, they would do military style torture. They had an old treadmill, and you just have to walk and walk and walk and walk and walk until you thought, you know, it reminds me, I call the transportation house, it's very much a POW camp. And I, as a voice for these little ones, I want people to understand exactly what this is. It is physical and mental torture. And you'll never hear me say child sex transportation. You'll never hear me say the word sex in there, because that has nothing. I speak for the little ones. That is not, they have no idea what that word, that's an adult connotation. And to the little ones, it is raw, pure physical and mental torture. So he would do that too, and he had all kinds of other military styles of torture. The basement, you know, and I see the comment too. I just want to say thank everyone for listening, because I know this is difficult to hear. It's hard to share, difficult to hear, but for such a time as this, we have to know. You know, those Epstein files were just released, and this is hard for normal people worldwide to wrap their minds around the level of this evil. But I know one reason I survived is to be a voice for these voiceless little children, because once we're all aware of how heinous this is and how prevalent it is, then we can all rise up and take action. And that's, you know, we'll talk about, you know, later. You mentioned the ways that I do that, but I do appreciate everyone hanging in with us with the stories. The basement was a place of, and thank you, God bless you guys for your comments, truly warms my heart. The torture took place in the basement, the physical torture. So for example, he had, to this day, I'll have body memories where the mind forgets things, but the body remembers. And so as a marathoner, I'll be just an example and take you back to the story I'm getting ready to tell you about the torture in the basement. I'll be out running. So I was out running one day and completely lost the use of my right leg. Just, it wouldn't work anymore. And so I'm 3 miles from home. I had to drag my leg home because it just wouldn't work. And something triggered me. And I say even a doorknob can trigger me, because I went through so much horror. Anything can kick off a memory. And by the time I processed through what happened and remembered, because once I remember, then my body starts working normally again. But this military insane man that ran the house, in the basement, he had a row of casts that the children would have to wear, so we couldn't run away. So we'd be wearing a cast on a leg and have to drag it behind us, so that we couldn't, you know, leave the house, because you'd want to run, although we never would. So there was torture like that. There were all kinds of, he had a workbench in the basement, all kinds of instrumentation used inside various parts of the body. The pain was awful. Probably the worst part for me was listening to the other children scream and waiting your turn. And they had a room, one time I was out running and I had another body memory and remembered that I guess back in the olden days, they didn't use like electric washing machines, and they had these ringers they would have two kneading pins that you'd like roll out with bread, and you like would stick clothes in between them and wring all the water out. So they used that for children's fingers. And they had that in a room, and I can remember when I was 2 waiting my turn, and it was horrific to hear the screams, and so it was nonstop, you know, physical and mental torture, and of course the PDF behaviors regularly with one or multiple people all day and night. The backyard, I can remember where the hunting parties would start, and they would make you think that if you got away, you'd really get away and not be harmed. But you know, I was 2, I was 3, I was 4. I didn't know that they could actually catch you in the end. They had a shed in the backyard that they would use for torture. They'd hang you upside down or hang your extremities in the air and put bugs there, and you'd be stung and you couldn't move. And to this day, the house I live in now, I've lived here many years, 14 or 15, but it has a shed in the backyard. And for the first 8 years that I lived here, I couldn't even walk in my backyard. I couldn't even enter the shed. It was just the triggers of being in a yard where the hunting parties would start. And then the shed where you'd be tortured so badly. And then finally one day, you know, I heal more and more and more. I have lots of ways that I heal that I share with other people. And whenever I started processing through the shed and healing from that, I ended up decorating the inside with pictures that little kids would have, and put toys in there to make it more of a loving memory environment for the little girl in me. And I bought one of those rest in peace signs that you would like put on a pet's grave, because I have guys that mow my yard and I don't want them to think I'm you know, crazy, because I'm not. They're the crazy ones, not me. The people who did this to me are the crazy ones. And so I put a little rest in peace, because there's parts of me that died back there, you know, whenever I was a little girl that survived. And so there was that. And then in the backyard, you'd be buried alive also. And you know, I would see a lot of children that they killed, or that, you know, the children who were brought in that weren't trained. You have to be trained from the time you're born to about 1 or 2, or you can't survive it. And I would see that little bodies of children brought in that were older, they would just die, because their little minds and bodies could not grasp the horror of what was happening to them. So a lot of bodies buried in the backyard. And, you know, we've been hearing about this New Mexico ranch. They're going to find a lot there. And as a matter of fact, I'm on a mission. I wish every neighborhood in the world would get those. They have the machines now where they find like old crypts and tombs of people that are buried underground. We need to do that worldwide over every inch of property and bring all these children home, because there are so many children that I want them all home. You know, I want them, even if they pass, to be reunited with families, and they're going to find a lot on that ranch, but it's not just there. It's many, many places. So we'd be buried alive in the backyard. And those are probably a lot of the, I forgot the adrenochrome harvesting room.
Oh yeah, we got to be careful with that subject, because YouTube's banned us talking about that. I had a friend who lost his channel for talking about it.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but well, let's just say you could just call it the liquid or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Yes, thank you. So that would happen in the basement. They had a room that was shaped, it was round, and it was painted. There's like a really ugly pea green military type color, and the room was painted that way, and it was round. And then it came down to a grate where the material was collected. And the children, they had metal wrist restraints, chains that were hooked in the wall. And so the children would be hung up by their wrists while that procedure was happening. And part of what I had to do too, part of my chores by the time I was 3 was to clean that room up. And so I was, you know, in there all the time trying to help the children. Most of those didn't make it. And that's also too where I saw Baphomet. I would see Baphomet. That's the demon that you see that's has the goat head, and the goat for the top half of his body, and the male is the bottom half. And he was always in this material gathering room. There was also one at the underground lab, and he was there too. It's the only place I saw him. And you know, the pictures you see today will show him with mixed genitalia, and those aren't correct. And unfortunately, I would know exactly what that was whenever I was a little girl. But yes, that's him. Scary, scary, scary thing. And see, that shows him like with breasts, but he doesn't. I mean, somewhere along the way, I think that was just to make him look creepier or something, but he did not have that. But that's exactly how he looked. And I did not see wings either. I see wings a lot on the pictures now. I think that's to make him look more scary. And he was scary, don't get me wrong. He was very kind of large and in charge when I was little, but that's exactly who was there. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's, I think probably, Sean, the highlights of that transportation house.
Right, I hear you. So our viewers asked a question that I've been pondering as well, and that is, why are they doing these things to the kids? Here's the viewer's question. Would you say it is gratification, fun, power, control, or feeding forces? But you also said there's like a military, like an experimental side to it as well, didn't you? They like, we know about MK Ultra, traumatize, brainwash, control. So, what, in your opinion, out of all these proposed things they could be doing it for, which do you think they're doing it for?
I think the number one reason is money, above and beyond anything else. I think it's purely money. You know, we're seeing that too with the Epstein files, money and then power. That's what all that's about. Plus Baal worship. They're Satan, Luciferian Satanists. So they worship Satan, and he demands sacrifices and harm to the children. That's part of Baal worship. They absolutely enjoy this. They are not like us, so it is very gratifying to them. I'm not sure if they would call it fun, but it's money, power, and who they worship.
And what about the military side of it then? Because you've been talking about that.
The military side that I was involved with is that the man that ran the house was ex-military, and it was a feeder to the university laboratory where the other children went to. And that was the main side of the military that I saw, except for the customers at the transportation house. They were from all walks of life. So military, religious garb, law enforcement, businessmen, women, you name it, and they would be there, including the military.
So, is there an element then where they bring a new person in, and if that person commits these atrocities, then they're like bonded and they could compromise that person? They're part of the club.
That makes perfect sense to me. Now, my memories are whenever I was a little girl, so that's the perspective I speak from. But they were all extremely friendly with each other. They all knew each other. They were all part of the club, you know, I think, and we hear that too with Epstein files. I mean, they're all part of a club that we don't belong to, nor do we want to. But they're very, you know, I could see why everything has to be a secret, and you can't tell anyone anything because they see each other doing all of these things to the children, and you know, you'd be in prison. As a matter of fact, one of my body memories, I used to be terrified of the thought of jail, absolutely off the charts, terrified. And until I remembered, I would constantly hear them say, you know, we have to be quiet or we're going to go to jail. We're going to go to jail. They were terrified of jail. And as a little girl, I didn't even know what that was, you know, but I knew it was a scary place. I knew it was like a super, super scary place because they were terrified of it. So they all knew if they were ever caught that they would end up in jail. And so very secretive in the club. They all loved what they did in front of each other, had no problems with it. But you bet that would keep everyone quiet because none of them wanted the consequences.
And were these the, let's say, abusers? Were they from all walks of society, or were they more from elite society?
All walks, from what I would see, because I would see the law enforcement there, you know, I would see the business people, regular looking. To me, it was all walks of life, but I wouldn't say the lower socioeconomic. I would not say I ever saw that. So they were people of some, you know, middle class to upper class is how I would describe it.
Okay. And you said that, you know, other kids were getting unalived around you, uh, babies in the freezer, etc. How do you think you got through it without them wanting to do that to you?
So they actually did put me in the freezer, but I'll tell you why why it didn't happen to me. Children were always divided into two categories: those that had a home to go to and those that did not. And because I had a home to go to, I wasn't brought to the point of death unless it was accidental. But the children that were intentionally killed, they did not have homes to go to, so they were transported in with different measures. But I do remember one time for punishment, they put me inside a deep freeze where you'd put your meat, and then they forgot about me. And by the time they found me, I was extremely close to death. And I would have welcomed that because the pain was so horrific. As a matter of fact, as an adult, I remembered all the times that I had, wanted to commit suicide whenever I was little. A teeny, didn't know what it was, but wanted to do it. And I remember talking to my therapist about it, and she said, Lynn, she said, you didn't want to do that. You just wanted the pain to stop. And she's right. I mean, I just wanted the pain to stop. So I remember when they pulled me out of the freezer, I knew I was close to death, and I was okay with it because I still remembered where I came from, much better place than where I was. But they were able to bring me back.
So did this preclude you then from having friends as a kid or going to school?
I did not have friends because I wasn't exposed to what I would call normal children. Now, by the time all of this was over, because all this ended whenever I was 5 years old, and it ended as simply as my parents got divorced and moved far away from where all this was happening. And my grandmother lived in that town, had no idea what was going on. So she was able to keep my mom in check. And I know I was followed by the government ever since, still am. But I wasn't back in the program because I was too far away from it at that time.
So how did you extricate yourself from the program?
Well, it was just as simple as that divorce. The physical, geographical move was far enough away to where we weren't in that vicinity, and so it stopped. And like I said, I know that they followed me ever since. As a matter of fact, 2 months before I was activated to start speaking and sharing my testimony like this, they tried to run me off the road and kill me. I've had a few attempts like that since I've been speaking, but I'm not going to stop.
So how often were you in the underground?
The underground lab, it was part of a U.S. University medical center because it's like that all over the world. There are, since Emma Catherine's shows, she's probably listed 20 universities worldwide where we have proof of this, and there's many, many, many more. And so at the university, it was underneath the University Medical Center where they have labs where they experiment on the children in conjunction with the government through the MK Ultra.
And can you describe your personal experience of that?
Whenever it was time to go, and I would go often, I remember a government employee coming to the house and my mom writing a check to him because they called it camp. We were going to camp. So my mom liked to pretend that I was going to camp, and she would write a check to the man who would pick me up to take me to camp. And he was a government employee, and he would inject me with drugs and put a hood over my head, put me in the back seat, and we'd go to the university. And whenever I got there, it was the first we were taken to the Performing Arts Center, and there were thousands of children each time I would go, adults everywhere organizing them, no more than 8 years old. And they'd be separated by those that had homes to go to and those that didn't. And then we would all go, there would be what the little girl and me would call money changing tables. So the big folding tables would be set up. So when the PDFs arrived, they would pay admission into this Performing Arts Center. And then the children were all taken backstage. And when it was our turn to perform, it was a child slavery auction was what it was. And we would perform, it would be similar to strip clubs performances for the PDFs. And, again, no one was over 7, 8 years old. And then the PDFs would purchase us and then do what PDFs do. At night, I can remember the gym being used. They'd have beds lined up, rows and rows of beds, and the children would be in the beds, and the PDFs would, I could hear them giggling and talking as they went from row to row and doing what PDFs do. And then at some point in that, we'd be taken to the underground labs. And when I talk about the labs, they look the same underground as any hospital would above ground. And we saw that during the Israeli incident in October 2024. They showed us pictures of all of the hospitals underground there, in case there's war for the soldiers. And it looked exactly like that. And there would be two sections. The children that didn't have a home to go to, I'll talk about in a minute, but I did. So I was taken to put on a dental chair. And to this day, I have to work really, really, really hard when I see a dentist, which I try not to. But we'd be put in dental chairs, and then there would be a doctor and a nurse, a med tech. They would be dressed in, the doctor and nurse would be dressed in surgical garb. So they'd have the masks on and the hats and everything, so you really couldn't see them. And then I would have all kinds of wires coming out of me for the experimentations. And then they would have medical boxes that would like graph the charts of what was happening inside my body, depending upon what they were doing. And at the same time, there would be government employees there. And there was a giant flat screen TV where other people were watching. It looked like government employees too. And they would do various experiments. A lot of them were very sexualized in nature. But there were also, they did a lot of big pharma development at that time. So a lot of the big pharma we have now was developed based upon what happened with the children underground. And then after sessions, they would erase my memory, and they would use electrocution. So I remember after different events that they would do things, I would have to remember in excruciating detail everything that just happened. It was one of the most terrifying times of all, because the seriousness, if I didn't remember every little teeny thing that they did to me, the things that they threatened to do, which I knew fully well they could, were horrific. And what they were doing was they were mapping in my brain where that memory was. And when they found it, they'd electrocute it. So they'd fry my brains. And I've heard military people give that kind of a testimony with what happened to them too. And so, but they didn't count on God, because my memories are coming back. And I do remember regardless of what they have done to me. But there was a lot of that, and it does give me trouble today with some things, like in my personal life. Sometimes it can be hard to remember things. I have to write down quite a bit to remember, but I remember what I need to. So that was on a regular basis. I also remember one time they killed me, and because with Big Pharma, they were testing how much of a drug they could give you until you died. And they accidentally, I know it was by accident, overdosed me, and I died. And I remember being in the air, looking down at my body and they were running down the hallway, and I could see I knew the lights were overhead, and I knew that I was dead, and I was pleased with that, because again, the pain stopped, whenever that happened. But clearly they brought me back to life. And then on the children that didn't have a home to go to, there would be rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of them, many, and they'd be on metal surgical tables, and they would have tubes running out of them. And then that's where they would also do the liquid gathering. And then they would also do, I'm not sure about words, Sean, so you can guide me. They would do, people have organs in their bodies, and so they would remove those while the children were still alive. No anesthesia, screams, horrific. And these evil people enjoy all of that. And recently here in the United States, RFK Jr., our Secretary of Health, he told us all, so here we can donate if you want your organs on the back of a driver's license. And he let us all know that they harvest those while you're alive without anesthesia. And I know they perfected that from underground, because there's a big business both with the liquid harvesting and then all of the parts. And so that is kind of the highlights of the lab.
So Lynn, these kids then who didn't have homes to go to, if they were sold at auction, would it be possible for a purchaser to take the kid and that kid might never come back?
I would assume so. And of course, I would not see or know that. I was too little, but that makes logical sense to me as an adult, because they bought them. And if they don't have a home to go to, you can take them anywhere you want for anything.
So, these things then were happening to you at such a young age. Were there never any adults who could have intervened? For example, were you ever taken to a doctor or anyone you could speak to?
So the doctor was actually part of it. And so he would administer drugs in the transportation house for the children. So no, there was no one to speak to. And actually the ability to speak, I had the ability to speak tortured out of me. It's like not crying. You're tortured. So POW camps, I think that's the best way to help people understand what this is like. Picture being a prisoner of war. They feed you what they want when they want. You drink whenever they say so. They can do absolutely anything to you physically or mentally at any time they desire. There's no one to stop them. And with the little children, there's no physical force or pushback. I mean, and so they don't want children speaking, because if I mean, they'd all go to jail or worse if their crimes were found out, because these are heinous crimes against humanity. It's unspeakable what they do and the level of their depravity. And these are the people who belong in prison, not who's being collected now.
So a few people are asking about your parents then. Over the years this is happening. What is their role, or where are they at this point?
So during this whole time, my dad had absolutely no idea what was going on. He was a workaholic and an alcoholic and was just never home. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. He thought she was taking care of me, and she was not. The generational pedophilia that she went through, that harms people severely when this happens to them. And why some people come out of this, harming other people and some don't, I don't know. She harmed me some. It was more physical, and I mean, it was more mental and emotional abuse, but they trained her how to perpetuate my training by what, she would do with me in the house. But she was fully aware and fine with it, because she hated me, and my dad had absolutely no idea.
So JM wants to know how many kids were going through this at the same time as you?
So in the transportation house, probably at any given time, there could be 30 or 40 is my best educated guess. But they were always, there was a moving in and out. There was a steady flow, in worldwide, the number of missing children would fill the city of Hong Kong every year. And that's how many children worldwide disappear, which I don't like that word. It sounds like a set of car keys. They're being, but that's, what our statistics, that's how they'll describe it, that the children disappear, but they're being taken purposely places and harmed. So there's a steady flow and stream of children available. So probably 30 to 40 in the transportation house. At the university, I would say thousands. I mean, thousands each time.
And could you estimate what percent of them were unalived?
80 to 90%.
Wow. And that a lot of that's done so that they can't ever speak out about the perpetrators, is it?
That's exactly right. And it's partly that. It's part because that's the goal for maybe sacrifices, or because they're too rough with little children's bodies. Like I remember whenever I was little, up until you're 5 years old, they can take your arms and legs out of joint and put them back in. And so I was regularly having like my legs put out of joint from the time I was a little baby, um, and put back in because of what the PDFs were wanting to do. And so
So Michael's asking if you witnessed any occult rituals.
yes, so I was at the local and regional and national level. It's interesting when I see that, because I don't remember that, but I'll describe what they do where. So at the local and regional level, there would be rituals, and they the men remind. So today in high school, you'll hear a phrase like nerds, something like that. I'm not sure if they use that word in the UK, but it's the men were like nerds, the ones that were super unpopular in high school, but kind of maybe on the weaker side. The women, however, they were big and mean, and there would be rituals, there would be sacrifices, their chants, their just like that. I mean, that's a great picture. Now at the national level, it was a whole other thing. It's underground, and if you can picture, this is where I was the most terrified of everything that I ever saw or that happened to me. But if you could picture a stadium inside, and the rows go straight down to the stage in the center, and it was filled with thousands of people. And the stage at the center was where they would do all of the child sacrifices. And there, only the men were in charge. And I remember there were, several men, maybe 10, I don't know, I couldn't count, but as an adult thinking back, probably about 10. And they were dressed in it was the same type of clothing you'd see at the Vatican during their high ceremonies, where they have the stiff material on. But it was all red, and it was red, the color of fresh blood. And they would have the long gowns on, and their arms, they would have those long hanging arms on their gowns. And then they would have the head garments where they'd have like the flaps that come down over their ears, and then the pointed hats. And they were extremely terrifying. As a matter of fact, I can remember literally just freezing in place from the terror of what those men did, and what happened on the stage during those sacrifices. It was their convention. They have conventions like we do, but it's not remotely like our conventions.
I think I found a picture of the Vatican with the pointed hats. Is that
Yes,
what you're
yes,
comparing them to?
yes, very much so. Now, but like their hats have the dip in it. The hats I saw were more like pointy, like a witch hat would be more like that. And they also didn't have the white things hanging down, but that blood red, that's a really good color. And the stiffness of the clothing, I mean, that's great. Yes.
Was there any overlap with any other secret societies, such as the Freemasons?
I mean, that's an excellent question, Sean. I have no idea. For all I know, there was, but my memories are the memories of a little girl and describing things as best as I can as an adult. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I really have no idea.
All right, so this is from Monique. Would you say some of the humans involved were possessed by demons and therefore could not control what they were doing, or were they humanly aware and complicit?
So both. Each evil person had their demon. Some was standing beside them, some was inside them where they were possessed. They could control what they did. They chose to listen to demons and do their bidding. And I remember. So if they're humans, some of them don't have souls. I remember one time being taken to a circus, and I believe it was in Paris actually. and it was a circus where there were only horses that were performers. And whenever I was there, I saw Satan himself. And the people in the circus in the audience, they were watching these horrific performances that the children had to do with the horses. And Satan was there, and he had a box with souls in it. So some of them have, literally, truly given their souls to do this, which is why it's very difficult for everyday people to comprehend the level of evil. But there was a lot of demon possession.
So how did it feel to be in the presence of such energy as Satan himself?
So I don't remember. I saw so much evil. I don't remember thinking anything different about him. It reminded me of Baphomet, just in the sense that I knew that this was an entity or a being that was extremely powerful while he was there. But I was such a little girl, he could care less about me. And I was super busy trying to survive.
Right, okay. Next question. Were any of the perpetrators, like, internationally world stage recognizable?
Not that I know of, but I wouldn't have known then, and I don't remember any faces. So I would say overall no.
Earlier, you talked about kids, a vast percentage of them getting unalived. What happened to their bodies is what Christine is asking.
So I know that there were a lot buried in the yard at the transportation house, which is why I really, really would love to encourage a worldwide search in neighborhoods for remains so that we can get the children home. We've been reading in the Epstein files about the liquid that's used to melt and dissolve, and I think that that's probably what happened to quite a bit. I think also probably some were burned. And then there was extensive tunnels underground throughout the world. And I'm sure that they have places there too where the children are taken.
Yeah, we had a guest on this afternoon, Alexander Mercouris, who's like a geopolitical analyst, and he said that they're going to find all kinds of bodies and remains at the Zorro Ranch, and Epstein himself is going to end up being classified as a serial killer when they total all of these bodies up. And it's crazy that they didn't even search that ranch. You kind of like got a pass until now.
I know. I was hearing that the owner didn't want it searched, which makes you wonder why. But that now it's going to be searched. So it is interesting. I was reading this morning on social media that Reuters published. So the UN had, not that I have any respect for the UN, but they came out with an independent analysis that if these crimes are true, that these are the worst crimes perpetuated against humanity in that in modern history, and that they're definitely worth the most severest punishment.
Anna wants to know, could any of these insane people be possessed or overshadowed?
Yes, I do believe that many of them were possessed and likely still are. And I'm not sure what overshadowed means.
I'm not sure either. I was reading that to think, could these demonic forces be driven out of them?
So I do have friends that are exorcists. And so I do believe that, they absolutely can be. The question is, I don't think they want to be. They like their demons. I still see people. So today I still see people who have demons in them. And I remember one time being at the gym, and this woman was checking in, and she was beautiful on the outside, but she was really, really mean. And I went to follow her into the locker room, and I saw wolf hair on the bottom half of her legs. And then we started talking in telepathy, which I didn't even know at the time I could do that. But I said, lady, I said, do you know you've got a bunch of wolf hair on the bottom of your legs? And she looked at me in telepathy and she said, yeah, and I like it. So a lot of people like the demons that they have, and they don't want them gone.
Wow. So Radley wants to know, why would the military allow this?
I would take us all back to Operation Paperclip after World War II. Now, this is in the United States where I am, but at that time, the US government brought in 1,500 of the Nazi scientists and put them throughout all of our systems, including the medical, which explains the underground labs. I call that a Nazi concentration camp, what they were doing to the children. And then they're also in the military, too. So the military, and I have friends in all of these systems too. So there are good people in the military, there are good people in the medical field, but that to me is the foundation of the problems in the military.
All right, we've got 30 minutes left before the next show. So we've got to the stage now where you said when you turned 5, it stopped. And a few people are asking if you could just expand on that.
Yes, so my dad, because he was an alcoholic, he also was a drummer, and he would play in bars and would drink and met another woman and asked my mom for a divorce. So then we just physically, geographically left the area. So we left where all of that was happening, and that's what ended it. Although, as I mentioned, they followed me ever since, and I know when they're around, and they've tried different attacks over time to stop my voice, but I'm not getting stopped. I won't be stopped.
So what was your life like then from age 5 to 10?
From 5 to 10, so I'm extremely intelligent. That's part of who they recruit for MK Ultra. And I was highly successful in school, straight A student, head of all the clubs, mega overachiever. To this day, I own several businesses. It's who I am and what I do. And so I led a quasi-normal life, always knowing that something was seriously, seriously wrong with me. I had a difficult time having any type of solid relationships, for example, because I didn't know how normal people interacted with normal people.
Okay, and what about dealing with the trauma then? I mean, you're still very young. Was it something that was kind of like overwhelming you?
So what happened to me whenever I was 5, I had a complete memory wipe except for 5% of my memory. And that's common with victims too, because it allows us to quasi-function in society. And that's what I did. Now, I had my first repressed memory at around 2015. And all of a sudden, I remembered being about 9 months old in my crib, being assaulted. And I can tell you exactly what the young man's shirt looked like, how I felt, what happened. And when I had that first memory, it dropped me to my knees just in a puddle. And I, was talking to the Lord about it. It was extremely upsetting. And that day I was in my car driving and praying, and I looked up and I saw a giant billboard, and it said, "It's never too late." And that's when I knew it was never too late to get my memories back, because that's part of what makes me healthy and whole today, is remembering. But I didn't remember for the longest time. And now, I'll get memories back on a regular basis.
So with the memory wipe then, did that enable you to settle into school at that point and do normal things?
It did. So I settled into school. I did normal things, straight A student, and functioned in society while still knowing something was horrifically wrong with me.
So there's like something in your subconscious, is it?
Exactly. Because I knew, for example, that I was terrified of people. And I had no idea why I needed to be terrified of people. So I was terrified of other children. I was terrified of adults. So I lived in fear 24/7, because I didn't have my memories to know why, because I was terrified of people 24/7, before my memory wipe. And so that was a problem. And I didn't know how to date. I didn't understand men at all. And I didn't know why I didn't understand men. But I didn't understand men because I was with animals, and they didn't act like, they're not like good, normal men. But because I didn't have my memories, I couldn't comprehend why I couldn't behave or think like other people. And the PTSD, horrific, off the charts PTSD, the least little thing would create such high levels of anxiety, and that made no sense to me either. And those are just a few examples. So I lived my entire life like two different people. This, a person who seemed, tried to face front that I was normal, although I'm sure people could tell that something was wrong. And then there was the other part of me who was just constantly terrified of everything and everyone, not even knowing why until I got my memories back.
What age did you get your memories back?
So it was about in 2015. So it's not been that long ago. And but I've gotten a lot of memories back since then. So I guess, 2015, 10 years ago. And I have an amazing therapist that helps me too. And my website, qgrit.org, I've listed all of the things that has helped me to become the sane, rational woman you see before you today. That people, I encourage people to go there, and I put all that information there for other people, so you can see what resonates with you. And I have an email there; people can reach out if they have questions.
So, as you get into your teen years, then, and like you mentioned, it was problematic dating and stuff like that. Would you say that you were carrying this dark energy, and did it draw people to you who were also PDFs or abusers?
So for me, thank God, I did not carry a dark energy with me. I have always carried an extremely light energy with me. And the reason for that is whenever I was little, God was always there, and Jesus was always there, and the angels. And I would go up to heaven a lot, and I still do. So I'm very much on the side of the light, and have been ever since I was little, which I believe is part of why I survived to be here today. I'm trying to help humanity by letting them know what's happened to the little ones and what they can do to help. And so I never attracted darkness to me because I could see the darkness, and I didn't want any part of the demonic dark forces. I had enough of that whenever I was little, and again, still see all that today. But I never attracted the darkness to me. It was more just a lot of internal confusion is the best way to describe it.
So would you say then that you lived a relatively normal life until the memories came back?
Yes, normal in the sense that if you'd see me on the street, my face front, I'm before my healing, I would be what I would call a chameleon, and because I had to do that to survive. So if you met me anywhere, I have the ability to read people like a large print book with a magnifying glass. I have 44 times the visual and auditory acuity of people that don't survive this. And so in a few seconds, I can tell you everything about you, any person, what they're like, who they are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. I know it all. And so I can be a chameleon to give them what they would make them comfortable. And that's how I live my life. And I never being my authentic self, never being my true self, because I didn't even know what that was until I got my memories back. Now I'm very authentic. Now I'm who I am, but I wasn't then. And because I could be a chameleon with people, it was a highly successful way of surviving, which is how I survived my childhood too.
So what do you think triggered the memories coming back?
I believe it's because I was finally safe. I had an ex-husband who was not a nice person. He was gone. I had an amazing therapist. I'd been in a group called Al-Anon for a while and had a sponsor. And so I had a support. I was living alone, safe for the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, praise God, I was safe. And when that happened, so I had a support system, and I was in a place I could start healing. And that's when the first memory came, and they've come back ever since. So, but I had to get myself safe. So I had to remove everyone out of my life that was a bad influence. And that's one of my tips to healing. So my mother, friends, ex, anyone who had bad energy and whose intent was to harm me, even if it was now mental and emotional, they had to go, because I needed to be safe, fully safe, to start healing. And that's when the first memory came.
So did those memories knock you for a six then? They must have like traumatized you all over again.
Yes, like that day of the first one, it was horrific. And as a matter of fact, I couldn't even believe what I was remembering, because I thought, this is not real. You're making this up. Now, I knew I wasn't insane, because I'm an international human resource consultant. I'm not insane. I've owned my own businesses for a long time. I knew that, but I could not figure out where this stuff was coming from. Thankfully, I had a marvelous therapist at the time, still do, and she does this marvelous technique that I have in my website, EMDR, and I could start processing this through. But at first, I couldn't believe it, Sean. These memories, I'm telling you, I get them one at a time, and I thought, this can't be true, but this is how it worked. I would have a memory, and then within 24 hours, God would show me something in the physical that was that memory, to let me know it's okay, I'm okay, this really happened. So, for example, when I was a little girl, I had a cat named Blackie, because Blackie was black. I was 3. So I had a black cat I named Blackie. And they took Blackie and they hung her on a clothesline and killed her in front of me. And then they hung me on the clothesline. And I thought they were going to kill me. I'd seen them kill many people. And so I thought they were me, but they weren't. It was just a torture lesson to get me to comply and do whatever they wanted me to do. But when I first remember that early on, I thought, no, people don't do that. People don't hang cats on clotheslines and hang little girls. This can't be right. And then I got home, and that day I was flipping channels on the TV, and a cartoon popped up of a black cat hanging on a clothesline. And that's how it's been with these memories coming back. So in the beginning, I would fight them, like, this cannot be. Humans do not do this to children. This cannot be. But in time, as everyone was affirmed, I thought, yes, this is. And then I started embracing my memories, because they're mine. And they tried to fry my brain, and they tried to take me out, and it's not going to happen. These are my memories, and I want my memories back. And I'm fighting to get my memories back, and I'm fighting for the little ones that they're being harmed. So I don't, I embrace what I remember now, and I heal from it. I process out the trauma, and I move forward. I'm always moving forward. I'm not looking back. I'm here to try to help other people.
But how difficult was it to integrate such horrific memories?
So it wasn't easy, I have to say. And even to this day, it's very, very, very difficult. And I get very, very traumatized. And I'm better. I am so much better. I'm so grateful. I'm so much better. But it still impacts me. So, I mean, just one example. Yesterday, I had internet installed. And I can't deal with people I don't know in my home. I cannot deal with it, especially men. So I was having 2 men I didn't know come in the house, and I'm here to tell you, it triggered me really, really bad. And my mind goes to the PTSD kicked in. My mind goes to the worst of the worst, the horror that they're going to do, and I have lots of tools now to help myself calm down and focus on what the truth is, and that's not, they're just 2 men installing my internet. But it's a difficult way to live. It's a very difficult way to live. But I'm getting there, and I'm getting better and better every day. And I'll continue to get better so I can help people.
Now, earlier on, you said you used the eye movement technique.
Yes.
Carol's asking about whether did you have counseling besides that?
No. And how it worked with the counseling, I fought that for a long time, because I was with my body memories. I thought something was actually physically wrong with me. And I went to every doctor under the sun. You name it, you name a skill, I went. Each one of them said nothing was wrong. And finally, when I was to the last body part doctor, he looked at me, he said, "Lynne, I think you need therapy." And I thought, oh, no, not therapy. That means you're crazy. But I exhausted everything else. And at that time, that the divorce started. So I have this wonderful, wonderful woman who's a therapist. She helped me through the divorce. And then the memories started. And thankfully, she is a leading trauma therapist in the United States. And she has helped me greatly. And I have seen her since probably, I've seen her for years. And I'll see her once a week, if not twice. And she is a key part of my healing as well as my relationship with the Lord and forgiveness.
All right, next question is, have you later in life been able to recognize any of these people?
I have not. I have not. And uh, I would recognize quite a bit of them, except of course the doctors and medical people were in mass so that you can't recognize them. But I would, and I haven't.
How does a human learn to trust anyone after this trauma from birth?
That is so true. Wow, that question just sings my song. I had absolutely zero trust in people, zero trust, zero. Uh, and I can't emphasize that enough. I trusted no one. And then I have since learned to trust. And the number one way I did was in 2 years ago, the Lord started having me look at non-invasive healing modalities. And he asked me to use a product called LifeWave. And he asked me to share it with other people, use it myself. And so I did, and it decreased the PTSD and anxiety by 70%. And it's healed 20 or 30 things in my body since then. It's been a couple of years since I've been using it, but at that time, the PTSD and anxiety was a big thing. And when the Lord said, I want you to share this with other people and help humanity, it involves relationships. It involves talking to people. It involves building relationships with people and helping other people, which I need for my ministry too. And by doing that, and by healing physiologically, it's enabled me to start trusting. I learned to trust with the team that I'm with that company, and now I can trust, and I can reach out, and I have never felt loved before, ever, until I've been involved with this organization, and then sharing my story as a truther, because I give love and I receive love and I trust. And since then, too, I have my podcast. For example, I'm a podcaster with the Patriots Prayer Network. We have a reach of about 1.5 million. I do a regular show there. And it's the same thing. Like when I was chatting with your audience, Sean, I could feel love, you know? And to me, I think probably people listening, like they felt that their whole life. I did not. And so to interact with people and have your audience be like, Lynne's here, and they were excited to see me. And so I was trying to get in touch because, all I had was an email. I didn't have phone calls. And so I said, I'm here if somebody, so I was chatting away, and they were just so supportive and kind. And that's so yes, in the past, I had zero trust. But as I've discovered different healing modalities, and I've reached out and been loved on by people and given love back, the trust grows. And it's such a huge life-changing event for me. And I'm so grateful.
I'll rephrase this one a little bit. So Nikki's asking, JE files are opened a Pandora's box. So there's an email where Jeffrey's talking to someone else about how much they love the torture video. And I think this viewer is asking, whether, based on your experiences, is that the kind of thing that Epstein would have been talking about, something like what you experienced?
Yes. And with me, I would have been a performer in the video. Not a well, I would have been one of the children in the video. Now, I'm not saying I was with Epstein videos. I'm not. I wasn't involved with that, nothing to do with that. But the same concept still holds. These people, these perpetrators, they enjoy doing this. They are Baal worshipers, Luciferian Satanists, and this is what they do.
And there's a huge market for those videos as well. You said it's about money in the beginning. It's crazy, isn't it? The amount of money that's spent on these sicko videos.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I've had whistleblowers. I had a whistleblower on my show who was with the FBI, and he was fired for this. But he was a good man, and he found millions of these files and videos of very high up people in the United States, not Epstein. This Epstein's one man of many people. So let's not think that this all stops and ends when we have some justice there. There's a lot of this. So he found quite a few of these, and whenever he and millions of files higher ups, no one in the United States would take the case. None of the justice departments they wouldn't touch it because of the level of the people that were involved. And as a matter of fact, as a side note, the night I had him on my show, I was sitting right here, And I prayed before the show starts because I believe in the power of prayer. And 5 minutes into the show, tornado sirens start going off. And where I live, that means you seek shelter. That means there's a tornado touch the ground close to you and you seek shelter. And I heard Holy Spirit talk, and he said, Lynn, he said, if you go seek shelter, you are in the greatest danger. He said, you stay here, you keep this show going, do not stop, because if you seek shelter, that's when you're in danger. So I had, there's a storm outside this window, sirens for a solid hour, but this FBI whistleblower I'm telling you about, I kept that show going. When that show was over, Sean, tornadoes had touched down a mile or two to the north of me, south, east, and west. That's impossible. Tornadoes do not touch down north, south, east, and west. But that was an attack, a weather warfare, because of that whistleblower story. And within a mile or two of my house, there was no damage, and the rest of the town was torn up. So, this is real, and it's big, and it's prevalent, and it's with very high up people who have quite a bit of power. And Epstein's just the first that I believe that we're going to hear.
So you've got a few people asking if this helped you develop any extraordinary powers, psychic, ESP, etc.
Yes, I have a lot of extraordinary powers. So I time travel. So I've traveled in the future. I've traveled in the past. I have telepathy. I see visions. I can understand what animals think. I can understand. I have telepathy. I can talk to people in other nations. So I have quite a bit of that, and it's a natural. So I still go to heaven a lot. I see angels. I see demons. I hear them too. I see God. I see Jesus, and this is a lifestyle that I live. So, for example, that horrible recent shooting in Canada with the middle school, I was doing a show with a bishop and felt led to start praying for the families and it's horrific, the children affected, the community. And I saw in heaven, I knew it was one of the children from that shooting. I could see him, just like I see you, Sean. And I could see him on the Sea of Glass. It's from the book of Revelation. I spent a lot of time there when I was little. And he was, I could see his face, and the Sea of Revelation was behind him. And he was so happy. And he looked around and he goes, this is cool. That's exactly what he said. And I could tell, I could see his hair. It was dark and thick, and he was a little chubby. And I thought he was about 12 years old. And he was so excited and happy. And they hadn't released pictures of any of the children yet. And they released pictures a few days after that, and that's when I saw the little boy in the picture. So this is how I live. This is natural and normal to me.
So earlier you mentioned the presence of Satan, and one of the viewers wants to know if you could describe Satan from your experience.
Yeah, he's tall and lean. And he wears a robe too that's very stiff, but his is more, I would say, a deep gold with bits of color in it. And the box he held of the souls, there are old boxes that it looks kind of like a treasure chest, but it's not big. It was a smaller box, and it was old, really like ancient, and it had leather bands around it, and he was just rubbing it like just with trying to expression on his face. I'm trying to describe it, this evil satisfaction as he just gently rubbed that box. And his fingernails were really long and jagged, ripped, filthy. And then his face was dark and sharp featured and reddish eyes. That's my best description.
How do you presently protect yourself energetically, mentally, and physically?
So in the morning, I have practices that I do. I have a series of prayers that I say. I believe in the Bible in Ephesians 6, the armor of God. So I armor up every morning, and I believe that that's real. And then between the prayers and the armor, then I set out for my day. I pray extensively throughout the day. Whenever I encounter demons, I bind them and get rid of them. I know I command angels. And so whenever I'm in trouble or I need help or someone else does, I command angels. This is the way I live. So for example, so because of all that protection, and the protection comes from prayer and faith and belief with the different prayers that I pray. And then the protection helps me during the day. So one morning I was sitting here working, and I've got a fireplace right there. And I've been helping some people in Europe who were I have a lot of LifeWave customers in Europe who've had trauma, their little children too, and then their families. And there was some witchcraft happening. And the next thing, I was sitting here, it was early, like 5 a.m. And all of a sudden I heard this demon wing coming down my fireplace. It was like, whoosh, whoosh. I mean, this demon was huge. I'm talking huge, because its wing was trying to get down my fireplace. And so I just bound it and got rid of it like I do and went on about my business. And that's when I realized my prayers. I always pray protection, for example, over my property. And I always pray protection throughout my house, my land, and under the ground. But I wasn't praying the airspace. And that lesson taught me you need to pray protection in your airspace too, because that's where the demons can fly.
Next question is, a few people have wondered about your relationship with your parents over the years. Did you continue having contact with them later in life?
So I did. I'll start with my mom. I did with her, and she, to give her some credit, because I've since forgiven her a long time ago. That was part of my healing. Once we moved, she did provide shelter and clothing and food, and so I'm grateful for that. And I would be in touch with her because it took me a long time to get out of the denial of what she'd done to me. Once I was out of the denial, that was part of my healing process. Then I tried to have as little to do with her as possible. Now with her, several years before she died, she told me she was afraid of going to hell when she died. And so I led her to Jesus. And then at her funeral, when she died, I had a little nephew who's 4 years old, and he came over to me and he said, Lynne, and that's what the little ones call me. And he said, you know that lady in the box? And of course he's 4. That's how he described my mom. And I said, yeah. And he goes, she's standing right over there, and she's got a big angel on one side of her and a big angel on the other side. So I knew she was in heaven. So I will see her up again there soon one day. Not soon, but whenever I'm called home. My dad, I did not know him my entire life because of that divorce. And a few years before he died, he reached out to me and he asked me if he could meet me. And at first I said no, because to me he was a stranger. I mean, I hadn't seen him since I was little. It would be like a strange man in my life. And then God showed me a scripture in the New Testament that says to honor your father and mother. And the Lord said, and it doesn't say unless they were divorced when you were little. So I got a hold of him. And Sean, it was the best thing, one of the best things I could ever have done, because I realized I was loved. He had absolutely no idea what was happening to me. He was an alcoholic and a workaholic. He had his own problems. Now, he and my mom both failed as parents. That's true, big time. But I was able to develop a relationship with him. I was able to feel loved by my father. And we had a wonderful relationship until he died. And when he died, I was able to be by his bedside and then and watch him pass. And then I had the most amazing experience too. A week after he died, so whenever I was little, I had to stop feeling. I couldn't have served the children who had feelings, they died. So I stopped feeling whenever I was little, and I had to figure out and learn how to feel feelings. And after he died, I was in the depths of grief, and I had no idea that grief could be. I had no idea. And I lift weights. I'm a weightlifter, and I was lifting out weights in my garage, and all of a sudden there's the presence. My dad's there, and so my earthly father and my heavenly father. God was there, and Dad was there, and they were both there. And I couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence. And being around God, being in heaven, it's like on earth we wear this weighted blanket of worry and stress and fear. all that's gone. I mean, it's just, it's astounding. And my dad stood there, and I knew when he died, he never had a chance to see where I lived because he lived too far away. And so I figure after he died, he wanted to come see me. And so he was there. And the only thing he said was, "Your mother hurt you badly." And the way he said that, it continued to affirm he had absolutely no idea. And he found, and I never told him when he was alive, but he found out whenever he died. So I was able to have a beautiful relationship with him on earth. And once I'm gone, I'll have a wonderful relationship with my mom in heaven.
Wow. That's a good way to round it up. We've just got a few minutes left.
Okay.
And Marv's wondering about, do you find helping other helps?
I do. I find helping other people helps. The first thing that helps me is sharing my testimony like this. So thank you so much, Sean, for having me on. It's very healing for me whenever I speak. And then it's very healing for me whenever I help other people. I have to say, especially the little ones, because I'm called to help these little teeny ones. And that warms my heart most of all. And then I'm also very warm to help adults with any type of trauma, because I help vets, and trauma is trauma, and it doesn't, I mean, I know I had horrific trauma, but Dr. Jan Halper Hayes, your audience has probably heard of her. She's a friend, and she says that 83% of the world right now suffers with PTSD because of everything that's been happening. So trauma is trauma, and I love to help people, which is why I encourage everyone to go to my website, qgrit.org, sign up for the newsletter, reach out if you have questions. And I try to answer every email. If you don't hear back from me for 2 to 4 weeks, reach out again, because I get quite a bit. I'm sure you do too, Sean, but I try.
Yeah. Honestly, phenomenal. What the way you've just emerged from these horrors, we just absolutely salute you. Is there anything that you'd like to say in conclusion then, to the viewers?
I do. I want to leave people with the thought that there's hope. You've heard everyone's heard what I've gone through, and if I can make it, they can make it. And if I can heal and get to this point, so can everybody. We have all been so harmed throughout the world by what these evil people have done at so many different levels, and we can have the victory. We don't have to have shame and defeat. We can have the victory. We just need the tools to be able to do it. So I just want to encourage everyone again to reach out, look at qgrit.org for some tools and help. I've got lots of information there, and I'm glad to help anybody.
And all of Lynne's links are in the description box. If you're watching this on replay, I'll put the website and I'll put the X in the live chat right now. You've got like dozens and dozens of unanswered questions from the viewers, so perhaps we could get you back on at some point in the future.
Oh, I'd love that, Sean.
But you're such a powerful speaker. It's just so important what you're talking about. So we really appreciate you, coming on and sharing these things, which must reliving it must affect you somehow. So we appreciate you going there and continuing this mission. So a huge thank you, Lynne.
Thank you too. I'm honored to be here, and I love your audience. They were fun to chat with when we started.
Yeah, they're so supportive, and we've had a lot of survivors on over the years, and they've all said it's been a very safe space for them. So
yes,
yeah, thank you, viewers. Thank you. All right, I'll close the show and let you go then, Lynne. You have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.